Welcome to Impacting Jamaica, where we spotlight the many but often ignored positive happenings, activities, projects, and investments at every level across every sector to inspire, motivate, and excite people everywhere. Impacting Jamaica is powered by the Flow Foundation.
Thank you for joining us on Impacting Jamaica. Today our guest is Mrs. Audrey Hinchcliffe. She is the chairman and recently retired CEO of Manpower and Maintenance Services Limited. And guess what? Mrs. Hinchcliffe will release her latest publication, A Time Like No Other, the COVID-19 Pandemic, Perspectives on Jamaica's Experience. Mrs. Hinchcliffe, thank you for joining us on Impacting Jamaica.
Thank you for having me, Miss Keisha. Good to be with you again.
All right, so this is your third book in 3 years. Quite a bit of information you have to give the public. What made you decide to write about the COVID-19 pandemic?
All right, first of all, I am a public health person. So during the lockdown, I was fascinated to be at home and had the privilege of I'm a news junkie, let me declare that. So I was, during that time, working on another book and at the same time, tracking what was going on with COVID. My interest stemmed from the fact that the time they were mentioned from the December 2019 that there was COVID, we started the research, and by March, Manpower and Maintenance Services Limited had the first workshop on COVID titled Facts Not Fair, and we had a lot of co-sponsors. So after that was the 5th of March. COVID came to Jamaica the 11th of March. This was where my company, which as you know is a major cleaning and sanitation company, comes in, where the whole world now looking for services came to Manpower. So starting that from the workshop on March 5th and coming through all that information from the workshop I had, and here at home now, watching the press conferences, watching the overseas news, reading up and because that's why the title of the book, A Time Like No Other. As public health people, we were faced with something that we were never faced with in our lifetime. Polio, TB, all those things were a long time ago, but this was something with a difference. So I decided that I was going to capture all aspects of it. And I wanted to get it a running publication because I see myself as taking on public education, in addition to having nearly 3,000 workers to educate and so on. And so in talking with Garfield Grandison at the Gleaner, he agreed that as advocates for COVID, Manpower, me, and the Gleaner, he would arrange to have the articles published. And so a total of 32 articles were written and published. And so that formed the background. Again, here comes Mr. Grandison say, look, we must put this in a book form for posterity, because although so many people were writing about COVID, I was the one who was consistent, tracking where COVID came from, where it is, where it was going, until we were declared really not free, but the restrictions were lifted. So that was my motivation, with the support of Garfield Grandison from the Gleaner Company, to make this happen.
All right, you mentioned you wrote 32 articles during the COVID-19 period, and you mentioned that these articles are in the book. Are there other sections of the book outside of the articles?
This book, the articles have now been organized into sections. This is the book now. I got the first sample of it yesterday.
Oh, wonderful.
It's written now. It is nice and sexy. But the articles are now arranged into sections for ease of reading. For example, the title of the book. The first article I wrote was Times Like No Other, the New Decade. That and other chapters are under a part 1 called the COVID-19 phenomenon. There's a part 2, control and prevention. Part 3, the vaccine debate. Part 4, socio-psychological effects of COVID-19. Part 5, changing dynamics of business operations. Part 6, hope in times of fear and chaos. And part 7, issues of compliance and conflict. So we were able now to arrange the articles into chapters under the different parts. So it's very easy to read. And for researchers, or if you just want to pick up the book and read it, you can go straight to a topic of your interest.
Okay, so there are 7 parts that you just mentioned, and these
Right.
are 32 articles along with other information.
Along with other information that came out of COVID. For example, Manpower got a lot of awards for the work it did. So we incorporated that in the book as well to show that we were rewarded for the work that we were done. We were the leading company with cleaning and sanitation. And then I had the privilege to have been asked by the Business Recovery Task Force to write the protocols on cleaning and sanitation. That is also incorporated in the book as an appendix. So whether now or if there's another pandemic in the future, this is a reference because the protocol for cleaning and sanitation for opening up back your business forms part of the book as an appendix.
Now I understand. This is like an appendage. You can use it as a reference going forward. So not only have you written the book, but it can be used as a reference. So let's get into who is your audience? You did mention
my audience is healthcare, researchers, policymakers, and anybody who is interested in seeing what COVID did, not just to Jamaica, but this book is applicable to the world at large, because the whole thing is about what COVID has done to countries. But I have just kept it real and kept it to Jamaica. But there's a lot of references. For example, when vaccine came along and everybody was making noise about it, I was able to write to show that we have been having vaccines for thousands of years. So what about this one? And then I went into the history how the vaccines came about, why it should be acceptable as any normal vaccine that is out there for any other previous diseases.
Right, because many persons were up in arms about the use of the vaccine, and also the fact that it took such a short time to be prepared. And I remember reading that article, and you were saying, just like you said, no, we've had vaccines for a number of years and for different diseases, so there should be no other. That first article you wrote, A Time Like No
Other, right.
Can you read at least the first 2 or 3 paragraphs from it for us?
It started out, as I said, A Time Like No Other, the COVID-19 pandemic, and even the people who wrote endorsements and stuff like that all referred to that because they had an appreciation that this really is related to a time like no other. And so the chapter starts off, let me just get it here. As I said, it's under the section that talks about the phenomenon, a time like no other, the new decade of the coronavirus. And I talk about how it crept up on us. And I talk about welcoming the new decade, right? I reflected that the country and the world could be better. The economy was sluggish, social and political constructs were intertwined and could benefit from separation, repairs, etc. And then I went right into it, this being where the country was as the backdrop. This was the backdrop for the entrance of SARS-CoV-2 that had emerged in the city of Wuhan, China, and reported to the World Health Organization on December 31st, 2019, now commonly known as the novel coronavirus. And having given that background, I said, life as we knew it changed in one fell swoop with the activation of the Disaster Risk Management Act on March 20th. It would rule our lives for the next 2 years. All right? A time like no other, we may never see again. It was frightening as we were bombarded by news on the media of the rapidly rising cases of COVID-19 deaths globally, as well as alarming stories from the family and friends and so on. And then I go on to say, because of my background in health, I had a good appreciation, and some of the things I mentioned in that chapter, not only coming out from the Ministry of Health in Jamaica, but from the World Health Organization, the Center for Disease Control, Pan American Health Organization, and so on. So this first chapter put you squarely into how it entered Jamaica and where we were at that time, and that took off to what it did to us in the next 2 years. So all the other chapters flows from this, telling us step by step, until the restrictions were lifted.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Movie time!
Let me, Mommy.
Little Mermaid!
No. This summer I turned...
Titans.
I'll be choosing tonight The Notebook.
No!
With Hub TV from Flow, now all your channels and streaming apps are in one place, controlled by your voice. Get internet and Hub TV for the special offer of only $6,499 plus GCT a month. Inspired by you. Visit a Flow store today.
Welcome back to our podcast.
Right. And you've mentioned that it's very easy to read. So the regular person can just pick up a book. Because with science and technology and public health, we have these jargons.
Yes.
And you've mentioned that it's very easy to read. I noticed that the book is not yet launched. So when is the launch of the book?
The launch is the 29th of November. We will have the books delivered to us by the 21st. It is going to be in Kingston bookshops across Jamaica. It will be on Amazon, and it can be had at all Manpower locations, which is Kingston, Mandeville, Montego Bay, and Drax Hall in St. Anne. So, as I said right about now, we are working to get it on Amazon, and it will also be an ebook.
What's the cost of the book?
Of course, it's far more than that, but because to make it affordable, 5,000 Jamaican dollars. And you can start pre-ordering. Actually, I'm getting pre-orders already, and it will be on sale at the launch, and I'll be there for signing books.
Wonderful. And you said it's available for purchase at Kingston Bookshop,
Yes.
all the Manpower offices and
And
locations.
I'm going to, right now we're working to put it on Amazon.
Okay, so we can go on Amazon and just type in A Time Like No Other, the COVID-19 pandemic perspectives on Jamaica's experience. So before we close though, you wrote about the pandemic and you wrote about what was happening. What was your personal experience with COVID?
I was traumatized from very early because of one of our directors of 16 years, and my good friend caught COVID, and she was among the early deaths. So COVID is very personal to me and the people at Manpower Maintenance Services Limited. During the lockdown, I am not a person who gets into depression and things like that. I found things to do. So I started, I'm a gardener. My home is a botanical garden. Intense gardening. Then I went back to book. I've always liked cooking and baking. I started baking and sending cookies, cakes, and pies for the staff because we didn't close office at all. So I got into my baking skills and what have you. And then I realized I need to start writing. And that was when I wrote the book Chapters of Your Life, because when my colleague Corinne Jones died, I realized that it could have been anybody. And it sent me soul searching, and that book came out in no time at all. Chapters of Your Life, Wise Words for Women and a Life-Changing Journey. So I made use of the lockdown by getting the articles to the Gleaner every 2 weeks, writing and launching that book. And at the same time, my other book was in production, and that book was also launched November 2020. So during COVID, instead started out wondering, how am I going to handle this? Because I'm an active person. Because of age, I can't go to the office. And I just turned it around and became far more productive. Gardening, cooking, baking, and writing, and 2 books out during COVID in no time at all. So, as I said, the sadness remains with me with losing a colleague. And as I said, every soul around me caught COVID except me. So maybe I was put here to be the witness and to tell the story.
And to tell the stories. All right, fantastic. So, a time like no other, the COVID-19 pandemic, perspectives on Jamaica's experience. Mrs. Hinchcliffe has written this book. It covers, social discourse, sense of observation, interpreting and providing the perspective on current events regarding COVID. And these were done in articles that were published in the Jamaica Gleaner, 32 in fact. And she has provided commentary on some of the issues and events that were pertinent during the height of the pandemic. So it's just $5,000 for the book, and you can pre-order. The launch is in November of this month, and you can get these books from the Kingston bookshop and all Manpower services locations island-wide. Thank you so much, Mrs. Hinchcliffe. Wow, 2 books in the COVID pandemic. You must have been firing.
Well, as I said, I got, they tell you when life throw you a lemon, make lemonade.
And you made more than lemonade.
More than lemonade. So as I said, this is my legacy. This is my legacy for public health.
Right.
Can't say if there's another pandemic that they don't have a recording of how they are to go about it. And I'm happy to say the book was endorsed by the book is endorsed by Minister Tufton, Minister of Health and Wellness. The introduction is written by the Minister of Education, Favour Williams, and the Dr. Peter Figueroa, a well-known researcher, also wrote the foreword to the book. So it's legitimate. It has the support of people at all levels of policymaking. It is an important book. As I said, I'm really just the vessel through which this book came. And the Gleaner also has started out the book by writing a statement by the head of the Gleaner group. So we are now getting ready to market this book because we feel this is a reference material that should be in the hand, as I said, of policymakers, health people, researchers, and so on. We will have the physical copies in hand by the 21st of November. The launch is November 29th. We're taking pre-orders. They just have to call Manpower's office, 876-920-472125, and they can place their orders. We're already beginning to take orders.
All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Hinchcliffe, for sharing this interesting information about, the COVID pandemic and also your experience, and also for writing this interesting book. As you said, we can use it as a reference going forward for years to come.
Impacting Jamaica is powered by the Flow Foundation. If you or anyone you know is involved with projects and activities that excite, motivate, and encourage, email us at impactingjamaica@gmail.com. That's all one word, impactingjamaica@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.